There once was a man who lived in Bree. It was where he always lived fancy and free. He lived with a dog and never was sad. The town knew him never to be bad. He had a fancy for archery and fencing too. No one could beat him, even in pairs of two. The whole town was famous, for he was well known. People occasionally gave his dog a bone. He loved his guitar, which he constantly played. There was also a charity which he always paid. One day, however, he grew too confident. Then he was challenged by a newcomer who lived only in a tent. Little did he know, this newcomer had a special arrow. He went to an island on which he made a bow. There was a little hermit who knew all. He made fishhooks and staves, all of which were tall. The newcomer came and built a bow out of a branch from a tree. Meanwhile the hermit was cooking and making tea. He then made one single arrow without the tail. The newcomer had to go and get some feathers to no avail. He could not find any on the island, so he went inland to find a goose. He came across one that was sitting next to a vendor selling a noose. The goose squawked and ran, leaving nothing behind. The poor man was not even stuck with a watermelon rind. He finally found one again near a store, which sat on the corner of a road. He grabbed it before it left and grabbed some feathers, then it left to be with a gray toad. Soon dawn fell and he could not sail, but he booked an inn and stayed for the night. He was in the lobby drinking a glass, but soon in came a knight. He was standing tall and fierce with a beard, but soon fell down in sight of a chair. The newcomer helped him to a seat, in which he fell face down in his hair. He was dead tired from a ride before, in which he came upon two thieves in the road. They called him and asked him if he could give them a lift, and well this did not bode. They jumped him and took his horse and his sword. They left faster than a deer with haste. They came to the inn to spend the night, though he was not well, as his face was the color of paste. The newcomer said he would help him recover all of his things the thieves had taken. He hoped to leave soon, but the innkeeper insisted they stay for some bacon. The next day they left at dawn, not saying goodbye. They passed a few travelers, to whom they said hi. They traveled 4 days until they saw what they were looking for. They saw a small house where two men lived, but the knight saw right through to the core. They tried to run, but they could not, and the knight saw his sword and horse returned. They thanked the newcomer, but he was already packing. He needed to leave and be well prepared. The hermit was waiting with the tea, but he was already fixing the feathers for his craft. The newcomer waited until the hermit finally prepared his arrow, and soon he left on his raft. He journeyed far and wide, looking for a good place to challenge. Then he came upon Bree with little money and only change. He saw the man who was very helpful, and saw he loved archery. He decided to place a bet on who was the very best, so they planned to shoot a berry. They were going to prepare only for a few days, but the winner would pay a few silver coins. In the next few days the man prepared, while the newcomer found an inn into which he joins. The newcomer prepared, but saved his arrow, which never left his sight. The man came and ate like a king, but the day before he got in a fight. The stranger attacked him and suddenly smacked him to the ground. He robbed him of everything, even his bow, which took a while to be found. The thief was caught and everything returned to the man, however, who blamed the newcomer. The newcomer had to flee, and soon they found him, and he thought he was a goner. The man gave him one chance, however. He had to beat him in 2 games, archery and fencing. He went to a church that because he knew he was lost, and couldn't hope on even a wing. The day had come, and then he hoped for the best, and grabbed his sword. Just before they were about to fight, a spectator grabbed the newcomer for a word. He said that the man was the best, and he could only hope to get him angry. Just as he put on his mask and hoped for the best, he ate for luck a cherry. They would go 4 rounds, and the newcomer or man would shoot first if they won in the next match. They started, and the man hit the newcomer's blade into a patch. He ran to grab his sword, and as soon as he touched it, he felt a prick of pain. He didn't cry out because it would seem as if he would weak, and he didn't want laughter like rain. He grabbed his blade and went back to the arena and readied for round 2. They started again, and he swung his blade. He knocked the man's blade out too. At once the man's smug grin disappeared, and the newcomer knew it was war. They immediately knew that any hope of keeping it clean was no more. Round 3 had begun, and immediately the man rose his blade to strike, but there was no one there. The newcomer had rolled under the man and swung at him, but there was only air. They parried and slashed for 3 whole minutes, and finally the man landed a hit. The man was winning 2-1, and finally the man tripped into a pit. There was no winner, so they had to have a tiebreaker. They were to go to a shop and then find a baker, grab some bread and eat it all, then they would fight full of dough and see who was better. They started vigorously, and they both ate all the bread, to which neither would deter. The man was jolly, knowing he was better, but then he fell and the newcomer swung and won. It was decided the newcomer would shoot first, but the man was not finished and swung one. He hit the arm and it went deep. The newcomer would be fine, but not able to shoot. Someone would have to shoot for him, and it was the hermit, who had only a boot. The man scoffed, thinking he was able to win against the hermit more than the other. The arrow the newcomer made was meant to never miss, and as quiet as a cat's purr. They were to have a week to prepare, and the man would be punished for hitting the challenger. The hermit was planning to win for the newcomer, who had spent some time to get the arrow. As he was out hunting to practice his aim, he came across a doe. He almost shot it when the newcomer came out of nowhere to warn him not to attack. They left the forest when someone came out of nowhere and gave the newcomer a whack. The assailant fled, and the newcomer knew it was the man who he had challenged. The hermit knew he had to win in order to let the newcomer be avenged. In 2 days the competition would begin, and when the newcomer's fate would be found. The hermit had polished his bow, and the newcomer sharpening the arrow to which all was bound. In 2 days all would be decided, the hermit and newcomer's fate along with the man's. In the night the man tied together the newcomer's hands. This threw off the hermit in the morning, and he couldn't cut the rope. The match was legendary. It was said to even be heard perhaps by the Pope. The next morning, with one more to go, the newcomer's hands were freed. Everyone knew about the foul play, and that day no one even pulled a weed. The day had come. It was time for the match, the one that would decide it all. Hopefully, as all would come to pass, everyone would have a ball. The hermit was preparing with help from the newcomer. They knew they had a slim chance. They whacked his bow and checked the arrow, and the newcomer brought another pair of pants. As all was prepared, the man came to check on the challenger and wished best of luck. The hermit knew something was up, and the newcomer was scared as a duck. They planned for anything, but they only had an hour, and only hoped for the best. An hour was up, and nothing could be done, while the hermit was hoping it was just a test. The man was planning to sabotage the shooting while keeping it all very subtle. Just before the hermit went up, the newcomer asked for a huddle. He said he thinks the man will try something, and he will try to stop it. The competition would begin, and would consist of shooting bullseyes in a bit. It all began with the hermit shooting, and he shot an arrow straight through the center. The man stepped up and shot lazily, but struck the target, and through it entered. The shot was on spot, and everyone clapped. Each person would shoot twice more. The shot was on spot, and everyone clapped. Each person would shoot twice more. It was now the man's turn to shoot first, but missed the target and hit a jug through water pour. The hermit's turn was now or never. He hit the center with no more than a gesture. The man was enraged and hit a table so hard people thought it would collapse with its structure. With the hermit shooting last now, the man had a chance. He shot and made a bullseye. The hermit was next, and soon he shot, but the man had a plan with a pie. The pie was flung at his face, and the arrow went high, but it was the arrow the newcomer made. The arrow went up, when people looked so high they fell in the shade. The arrow went down and straight through the center, and the hermit had won, no one believed. However, the man was enraged, saying the hermit had everyone deceived. He tried to say that he had attacked him and should be in jail, but no one let him get put away. The jailer grabbed the man as he attacked the hermit and had nothing to say. The hermit and newcomer were free to stay, but they left to the island where it had all begun. A thing to remember is to know that the newcomer and hermit were nothing but a pun. They were really royal people who knew this man was cruel, and dressed up to find him. Everyone knew them as those that beat the unbeatable, and knew they were true to the limb. All was well in Bree, and something to know is the man was well in prison. He knew what he did, and realized it was a terrible, terrible sin. The royal people did not wish that of the man, but he had brought it on himself in his actions. It was also known to only few that they had done this without royal sanctions. The man was too proud and greedy as well. It was original and happened before. He had given to the people and charities too, but he forgot to give to the poor. People glad were sad, but in the end there was no difference to them. He had made a difference, but it wasn't that lasting, unlike a hem. Overall, the thing to remember is to not get ahead and try to do anything to win. The lasting things are selfless and not for popularity, just like a pen. It's always there holding things up, but no one notices it. For the royal people, they realize that some people become evil and fall into a pit, one that they can never get out of until it consumes everything within. They wanted to help him get out, and only by beating him would he toss it in a bin. Defeat is what changes a person who is greedy to win and be the best. Only then would he realize how much he's been a pest. Go ahead, don't get ahead and don't fall behind. Greed is a powerful force. Try anyway, even if defeat is inevitable, even if your voice is hoarse. A final thing to remember is don't give up and don't give in to anything. Everyone has a weakness, and holding it back may just be by preying on a